Good morning and welcome to this webinar on the topic of how to unlock the power of VR and AR to create engaging learning experiences. My name is Rebecca Cannerfelt and I'm the Digital Marketing Manager at Learnfire, one of the companies behind this webinar today. I will soon be handing over the word to my other speakers, but first let's have a quick look at the agenda for today. First of all, we're going to be able to listen to Mattias Borg, the CEO and one of the co-founders of Learnfire, which is the leading learning platform in the Nordics. After that, we'll get to listen to Anders Ribbing, the CEO of Wobbling, who will be taking us into the world of VR and AR and show us how it can be applied. After that, Jonathan Ticke, product owner at Vobling, will be taking us into the Wobbling tool so we can see how it actually looks. And after that, we have the honor of having a special guest, which is Mattias Gillby, HR manager and responsible for learning and development at SJ, a Swedish train operating company. And then you'll be able to write questions in the chat so we can try and catch them at the end. And then we'll wrap up the day. And for those of you who want to, at the end, you can get a chance to walk around in the virtual environment. But without further ado, I'll now be handing over the word to Mattias Borg, CEO and co-founder at Learnfire.
Thank you, and good morning or good day, wherever you might be in the world. So our mission at Learnfire is to help our customers to share knowledge with customer peers and also with partners. And our vision is really to make it as easy as creating in PowerPoint to create great digital learning experiences. And that includes offering a drag and drop tool for authoring. It includes making it possible to share content on any device, anywhere, very simply. But it also includes more advanced features such as video editing in your browser. If you want to learn more about that, we're going to send a follow-up email following this webinar, and you can contact us to learn more about how we work with our more than 250 customers. But for today, I'm excited to be here together with Wobbling and SC and talk more about how AR and VR can help shape different forms of learning experiences. And I also want to mention, I'm going to use the term XR from now on, so I don't have to repeat AR and VR for 100 of times. So XR would include both VR and AR. And this is something that has become more accessible, and you will hear more about that later on from both Anders and Jonathan as they show more. Our customers has, over the last couple of years, really proven working with Wobbling how they can use XR-enabled learning experiences to create even better learning journeys. And this is something that we'll also hear from Mattias from SC as he tells his story, how they used XR in improving their training. So XR, it might be feeling like we're looking a bit into the future. And I think that my role today here will be to give you a bit of a backdrop and also see how learning has evolved over time, and also give you a bit of a context to what has happened with learning as it has evolved. So starting, actually, I'm going to go back almost 200,000 years, because that's when learning started to happen. We had our ancestor Homo erectus that started making fires. And this was a huge evolution because that was the first kind of real proof that we were experimenting and learning. And that was something that then could be shown to other people to share the knowledge. About 100,000 years ago, another great learning invention happened. We had spoken language. And this made it possible not only to show how you could make a fire, it also made it possible to share sitting by the campfire. And this is also one of the great inventions and what really makes us stand out on this globe as a race, or as a species rather, that we can share knowledge over generation. And this really led to an exponential learning curve happening for Homo sapiens. Then something else happened, and that was that about 6,000 years ago, we had the written language. So now we can also start storing knowledge, which also was a big advance. And then about 600 years ago, you might not remember, but probably have read about the Gutenberg press, which made it possible to print and share content and materials in a written format on paper. This was also a huge breakthrough, obviously. And then more recently, about 300 years ago approximately, we started seeing formal education happen in the forms of schools and learning really institutionalizing in society. And this gave us what we today refer as three forms and often talk about three different formats of learning, which is formal learning, social learning, and experimental learning. And if you're a learning nerd like me, you might have heard about the 70-20-10 framework, which talks about that about 10% of learning comes from formal learning. Actually, this research was not really good research. It has been shown that this is probably more likely what it looks like, 55, 25, and 20%. But that's not the important point here. The important point is that there needs to be a mixture of different formats of learning, and that's how we people learn. And as we've developed through making the fire, sharing the stories, and also institutionalizing learning, these formats has really shaped how we learn and how we experience learning as human beings. So with that said, we also have an evolution that has happened in the last 300 years. And about 60 years ago, we had computers coming into the play, which obviously shaped things. And some of you might remember doing learning on like e-learning on CD-ROM and things like that. About 25 years ago, we had the invention of this big thing called the internet. And all of a sudden, most of the knowledge we have was freely available on the internet, which obviously also was a huge breakthrough. And then about 15 years ago, the smartphone came, making not only all knowledge available to all of us, but also everywhere. So sitting on a mountaintop or on a beach, you can access more or less any information or knowledge, which is amazing. What we're going to talk about here today is the next step as we see it and what's happening with learning enabling technologies. And that is AR and XR and VR, whatever you want to call it, and we'll hear more about that. And this is something obviously that has been available for a number of years. But what's happening now is that it's becoming much more accessible, both in terms of functionality, less cords and expensive computers, but also to some degree from a budget perspective. So we're starting to see new applications and new ways of using XR in training and learning, which is super exciting to see. So we'll see, I've said that in the past, as I've talked to a lot of our customers, I usually say I'm from a leadership training background. I've often said like practicing tough things, which raises a lot of emotion, like tough conversation, that's most often done best in a physical setting. I changed my mind. Tested VR and XR in training situation now, I've actually felt that it influences your emotions in a way that is very similar to physical reality. And that changes how we now can use these new technologies, not only for formal learning and social learning, but also for true experimental learning with things as both the technical stuff, but also soft skills. That is super interesting to see. And we'll hear from Jonathan in a bit and see examples of how XR can be used and integrated in what we call longer learning journeys. Because let's remember, it's one format and it enables a lot of things, but still using videos, quizzes, and documents is super important to mix things up and cater to different learning styles, etc. Now I'll hand it over to Anders, who will talk more about the applications of XR in training and also what the benefits can be of that. So over to you, Anders.
Thank you very much, Matthias. Hi, everybody. I'm Anders Ryding. I'm the CEO of Wobbling. I'm going to speak mostly actually about our very, very core, which is VR and training. Jonathan will also be talking a lot about how this can be integrated into learning management systems, such as Learnfire. And there we have like a bit of a broader, like a virtual training ecosystem, if you will. You'll see some examples of that as well. So just give you a rough picture. We're part of the By Kansas group. We're listed on NASDAQ, and we have a number of different portfolio companies that all are doing different things within, I'd say, XR, real-time animation, VFX, and solving, adding value in different type of industries, solving different type of problems. But Wobbling is solely focused on the virtual training aspect. And so the essence of virtual training is to digitize real-life training, physically being in a place, but now doing it in a digitized way. Easier put, I think, it's learn by doing. And once we can teleport users into a new environment where they can understand and they can train different things, we can also add scenarios and lots of new types of dimensions into this type of training. So this is applied to, we've applied a lot to like safety training and incident management. People are, they need to train in situations which you can't train in real life. Technical training, machinery, equipment, etc. We have maintenance procedures, which SJ have done a lot of. We have also soft skills training and onboarding procedures, which could be very nicely applied with VR. But do users really want VR? Maybe they want to train in a physical space. Our experience suggests that they actually do. They'd be a bit hesitant at first. You need to put on, a head-mounted display or teleport to another place, but mainly you can also be a bit exposed to other users being in the same room. But once they get the hang of it, they get started and they usually think it's very, very fun. And they do all want kind of the powers that VR can grant them. So if the user want it, it starts to suggest that kind of the market for global training is absolutely massive. And it's very, very physical in nature. It demands classrooms, access to machinery, equipment, a lot of instructors. It's truly kind of impossible to scale in a more like a traditional way of doing it. But with VR, there's a mechanic that can scale. So out of a corporate perspective, there's like lots of different ways that VR can add value. And these are just some of them. There's the real-time collaboration. We have spatial memory, muscle memory. I'll get back to that. And there's savings that can be done, less travel, less instructors, less classroom, access to equipment, aircraft that don't need to, you don't need access to, for example. There's all these time efficiencies. One of the important things as well is the 24 accessibility. So you have unlimited access to redos, or that's one of the cores of learning. There's also a safe context. You can fail safe. Nothing can happen if you don't put out the fire in the right way. Just start over, and then you can learn the right way. We can also create a lot of the impossible scenarios that can actually be done in real life. So it's fair to say, I think, that in a lot of these scenarios that VR can be superior to real life type training. And also you can experience like different type of role play, different types of perspectives. It's quite easy to understand other people's perspectives in VR as well. And I think one of the real cores of VR is the mechanic where it's really, it makes people learn and makes people kind of retain the knowledge. So knowledge retention is obviously crucial if you want a workforce that are better educated and prepared for their everyday work life. So I think if you look at it it's like text, word, video, PDFs, there are mechanics that can scale it, but there are also limitations. So text has a certain way of retaining knowledge. Videos is, I think, a superior way of educating people. But still, if you directly experience, it retains knowledge in a totally different way. And that's where VR, I think, has that fundamental, the most important value. So I think it's fair to say that what e-learning has meant for theoretical knowledge, in order to bring the same type of training programs to very, very many individuals spread across the globe, I think VR can be that exact same mechanic for corporate training. So if you can train on something that can be digitized, we can scale it and we can roll it out, and that's when you get that true value as a company as well. That very, very many people can train on the same type of software applications. There's also a technical aspect in this. I think one part is that the market has gone from bulk of cords, the need of a strong powered PC, and bulky big headsets. And there's a lot that can go wrong. So the technology has really, really matured. And today we're based on what's called standalone headsets, fully mobile, no need for PC, everything you need in one headset 2 hand controllers, and that's pretty much it. And then there's the other side of it. It's like, how do we get this as an integrated component into like a blended learning approach for corporates? So we need to find that way to integrate into LMS systems and work with companies such as Learnfire to make this a real like accessibility and make it trackable as well. And I'd like just to speak of one of the products in our portfolio is the VR Fire Trainer, and we're super proud of this. We were quite early on into this type of incident management and fire safety training. It rolled out in Norway for a couple of years ago, and then in Sweden with SJ as well. Now we have productized this, so it's more an off-the-shelf product, and it's just accessible to anybody to purchase. And it's taken to market with fire and safety professionals, such as Gloria, who just launched this in the DACH region, so it's Germany, Austria, Switzerland, the UK will be following. I'll just be showing a short 30-second video of what this product is.
The VR Fire Trainer is an easy-to-use, all-mobile digital training solution that delivers accurate fire safety training. Fight fires in different high-quality, fully immersive environments. Choose between several extinguishing agents for various fire types. Experience realistic fire spreading, smoke development, and get analytics based on your performance. Everything you need for a realistic and immersive fire training, all enclosed in a military-grade Pelican case. Book a demo today.
So what you see here is kind of what I think we like to define as a product. The product is solving a super clear problem. The problem is quite generic. It's the same problem pretty much all over the world, and we can solve it with a specific solution. And that's where the VR Fire Training comes into play. And the other thing we're working on are more custom solutions. So a lot of corporates have specific training procedures that you need to integrate into their learning and development programs. And Matthias will be speaking more about this at the panel as well. I've been fortunate enough to work with SJ for a number of years, and from the beginning, actually, when we stepped in, or SJ took the step into VR, and we're quite early. It started out in this. This is just the first 360 video that we rendered, and we captured it with like a virtual tour of a train that didn't exist. And that caught a lot of attention from different stakeholders within the company and management, and it was part of like a digitization of the whole company. But I think that thought was created where, how can we actually use this in order to train on something, in this case, a train that didn't actually exist. So this led to a series of workshops, all kinds of know-how we gathered up, business development, sales, learning and development, top executive management, were all gathered up in workshops that we were together hosting with a number of companies. And this together was, part of a prototyping session and learning, where does it really, really make sense? Because VR doesn't always make sense. And which specific procedures do we need to learn? What value does every VR application have? And how can that be going forward? So this was kind of the step, and this is, I'll say, the result. What you're seeing here is a video that's captured from within the SJVR platform. It has a number of training procedures, a number of different vehicles, and you can train on everything that's like super critical and also hard to train on in real life. In this case, a malfunctioning door that needs to be shut off in the right way. It could be other high voltage, in this case, like, hazardous type training situations that you need to train on. People can lose their fingers trying the brakes, etc., etc. And this has also been rolled out. So this is operational, it's live, it's at 17 locations today across Sweden. And I think actually we're quite pioneering there to jump into VR at an early stage. And they've seen the benefits as well. So you can be able to ask Matthias much more about this going forward. So with that, this is kind of the VR training component. I think Jonathan will take us a little bit more through what we also can utilize once we have developed the VR applications. There's a lot of ROI that can be beneficial when it comes to when we've created 3D assets. They can also be presented in 3D AR in lots of different ways. So you'll get more of that in Jonathan's presentation.
Welcome to this demo. Let's start off by logging into the Learnfire platform. Here, I am presented with all of my available courses. Let's pick one. Here, I can find all my activities, resources, and discussions regarding this course. And here is the layout of the course. Let's begin. In this first activity, we will learn more about Sweden's most popular train, the RC6. So here we have some text information regarding the train. And directly under it, we find this 3D model. We can spin it around like this just by dragging it. Really easy. Up here, I can toggle the annotations function. That will allow me to deep dive into the train and read up about the different parts and components that make up the train. I'm presented with this very intuitive text boxes that correlates the information that I'm reading on to specific parts of the train. So it's very easy to get an understanding of what information I am accessing at the moment. I can toggle along and read up on useful information like this, how much electricity the train draws. As the information is very contextual, I can even deep dive into specific parts and components of the train that I want to know more about. Say, for example, I'm very interested in this piece of equipment. If I want to know, for example, how to act in an emergency situation where I need to disconnect this, I can find the manual here. This will open up a new window with the manual for how to handle a situation like this. This could be useful for any type of information. Let's close down this window and go back. So when I feel that I have read up on all the information regarding this train, I can open up the quiz. As we see here, I've already answered all the questions. All correct. Nice. Let's close this back up. So before we proceed, let's take a closer look on how this looks directly in the browser. So when accessing the Learnfire platform straight from your mobile phone or iPad, you can actually press one button and place the 3D model in your space. You can walk around it, inspect it, take a closer look from all different directions and angles, straight from your phone's camera. Pretty cool. Okay, moving along. In this next activity, we will enter the cabin of the train. And here we can see an example on how 360 video could be a very good complement to regular 2D photos and 2D videos. A 360 video allows you to pan around, take a closer look, and inspect a certain environment. You can just drag it along to change your point of view. 360 video is much more compelling than a normal 2D photo with speech bubbles and some text. It gives the learner a much more engaging way to learn. Let's move on to the next segment. And here we will read up on the electricity on board and the controls for the doors in this particular case. Just like before, we are presented with some text, and here we have a 3D model of the compartment behind one of the latches. I press up here to toggle the annotations once again, and I can go in and read up on the switches and see what they do. I can just press next and toggle along. This particular 3D model is from one of the SJ training applications in VR. So a good example of how to reuse models throughout your curriculum. When I'm presented with a complicated part like this, I can easily gain more knowledge by just linking it to other resources. In this case, I can see how everything is connected. Let's close down this tab. So, when I feel that I know this component, let's open up the quiz. Once again, we can see that I've answered all the questions correctly. Nice. So let's go back to the course. Just the same as before, I can also view this model in augmented reality. If I access this from the web browser on my phone, by the press of one button, I can open up the camera place the 3D object in my environment and walk up to it and take a closer look. Let's press next again. Everyone knows fire on board of a train is a very dangerous situation to be in. Stressful situations are very good to practice many times. That way, when you're presented by a dangerous situation, you already know how to act. Just like Anders previously mentioned, our fire trainer kit comes equipped with everything you need to be able to train in these situations many times, whenever you have time. The environments are realistic with smoke, fire spread, and after you finish, you will get analytics based on your progress. This analytics data could be fed into this LMS system to give a complete picture on how you're doing in your training. Here we see another example of how useful it is to have all the information baked into the LMS system. Here we can see and go through the different components of the fire trainer kit. It's very powerful to be able to link all the useful information for the trainees. We can even link to the manual, for example, for the fire trainer kit. Going to the next activity, let's talk about the scenario training. SJ has a bunch of different trains, and not always are they available. From here you can download the SJ training application. Let's play this video real quick, this time with audio. There are many scenarios that you can't directly train on if you don't have access to the train. Example of this could be to connect power, to try out the brakes before takeoff, or other different scenarios. So as a final part, let's look at the online classroom. So an important aspect in training is to be able to discuss with your peers on what you have learned and maybe ask questions. This is a digital online classroom that runs directly in your web browser. In here you can see and speak with your colleagues, participate in workshops or online classes, share documents, pictures, videos, and so on. You can even share your screen. So from here I can open up the room, let it load, and press join room. This URL can be shared with anyone, anywhere. From here I can change my name and change the default avatars. I can choose one to my liking. This one looks good. Perfect. Press accept. And first time users need to grant access to their microphone. Now I'm done. I press enter room and I'm in. While in this 3D environment, I can walk around, look around, and talk to others. Let's invite a colleague of mine in just a few seconds. I can look around by just dragging it and use the mouse buttons or arrow buttons to walk around. Here we once again see the electrical cabinet that we had learned about before. Pressing the link brings me right back to where I left off my training in the LMS system. Learnfire is really cool. And here I can find the 3D model again if I need to rehearse. Let's close down this tab and back out. Let's take a look around the room and see what else we have here. Oh yeah, here we have the same 3D model of the train once again. I can walk around it and inspect it from all different sides. Really cool. Okay, let's invite one of my colleagues. And my colleague will join from a VR headset. Oh, hello. Nice to see you. So my colleague is wearing a VR headset, and we can talk and interact in a very natural way. You can even bring up a pen and do annotations mid-air. This could be useful for annotate the 3D models in the room or just have some fun. Okay, thank you so much for this. Okay, see you a bit later. Ciao. Okay, let's move on to the stage here and see how we can share a browser window or even my screen. So I open up a new tab here. Let's go to SJ webpage, for example. I go back to the room and press share. From here, I can press share my screen, and then that will bring up some options. Let's choose to share the tab I just opened, SJ tab. Okay, cool, this tab. And now the window has appeared in the room. I will bring it up to the stage and plop it up on the stage. Now everyone in the room can see this. This is very useful for doing presentations or other live events or just sharing knowledge. Here, let's take another example. I can press this link, and that will take me straight to Learnfire's webpage. Let's move back to the other side and take another example. So I can fill up these walls with links to different web pages or other resources. Here we have the Wobbling webpage. Okay, let's close that back up. So yeah, this is the online 3D meeting room. That concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for listening, and hope to see you soon.
Okay, it's time for a panel discussion. Perfect. And you all know these men. And I'm gonna start asking a question to our special guest here today. Nice to have you here, Matthias.
Thank you, Rebecca.
SJ is one of Sweden's most famous brands, but we also have some international guests here today. So do you just want to tell us a little bit about SJ and what do you do and why?
Yeah, SJ is a leading train operator in Sweden, but we also operate in Denmark and Norway. And my role at SJ is as HR manager, and I'm responsible for digital learning and development. And we oversee every aspect of training within the SJ group.
Thank you. And what about you, Matthias? You are the HR manager and responsible for learning and development at SJ. How long have you worked here, and what do your days look like?
I've been at SJ for almost 12 years, and a day at work is a day with different things. We all have meetings regarding new training needs, and we overlook our ongoing training programs, and we also engage ourselves into a lot of development of new and exciting learning methods.
And I just have to ask you this, did you always love trains, or what is your origin story for starting here at SJ?
I like trains. I love to travel with them. I've always been interested in the technology, and the trains have very high-tech equipment on board. And so my choose to go into the train world because I love the technical side of it, and I always have had a passion for learning and to develop other people.
And what would you say are the most fun aspects of your job?
The most fun aspects are the creative process, when you go from a learning need into something that you have constructed, like a training program, and then you get the results from the trainees. And sometimes we are successful and sometimes we're not, but we learn as we go on. And so I like that the journey is never ending. We are always looking for new ways to train our staff, and so it's been a really creative place to work for me.
And what about challenges? What do you see as challenges when it comes to training and the learning?
The challenge is to be when you find a trainee needs to be very fast and responsive to it, and to make sure that the staff actually gets the knowledge that they are asking for. And sometimes you do it in the right way, and sometimes it's not perfect, but we do a lot of piloting, and often we are on point with what we want to do, and it's been developing over a couple of years now, when we are in a place now where we feel like we have not total control, but we are in the leading seat of everything, every change that occurs at SJ, and we are building programs that are specific and great for the employees. In a digital world also, we have left the classrooms and now we're in the cloud mostly.
And you are here today because you use VR as part of your trainings. So tell us a little bit about this. How many have you trained so far, and which courses have you done, and for whom?
Yeah, we have trained almost 3,000 people. A lot of the VR training has to do with our vehicle training. And that was the first project started with Wobbling, actually, because we have a train called SE 2000. And we have made an upgrade of it, and we needed to include VR in the training program to shorten it. So it's a really virtual training program today. And so the other things we have developed is regarding the other train models, and but also things regarding safety training. When we connect our trains to an electric post, it's a really hazard thing, and in VR we can do this in a really safe way, and we can also observe that they know what to do before they go out in the real world. So it's been a real great tool to have in our toolbox.
Thank you. And what made you decide to start looking into VR? Because it seems you are quite early adopters of this. What was it that wasn't working as well as you would have liked, or what did you want to achieve? At Learnfire, we call these the jobs to be done. What were these?
I think it was about 4 years ago, as he decided to start on a digitalization journey. And one of the first things to look at was training. And during that period, we had the opportunity to be on participate in different digitalization workshops, and in that environment we were introduced to VR and other exciting technologies, and we saw potential in VR, and it helped us solve one problem, and that is that we sometimes when we conduct vehicle training, the trains are not available because they're out on the track or they need to go into for some maintenance. So to have virtual trains in hand, we can instead go into the virtual world and start to train there. And when the trains then come into the depot, we can go on them in the real world. So that mix is fantastic to have, and it also have saved us, because sometimes we need to practice on board, and to do that in a virtual environment has been a thing that has helped us and saved a lot of training, actually, that we don't need to go back and redo.
Thank you. And now over to you for a bit, Anders and Jonathan. Anders, I need to ask you as well, what is your origin story to become the CEO of a company like Vobling?
Well, I have more of a business development background. I've built a lot of kind of more like an entrepreneur type career before I went entrepreneur, but I've always been kind of had a real desire to solve problems and add utility in a new, unique way. And I have a lot of tech interest, I'd say. So I saw something that could be provide a lot of value to businesses. And from the beginning, it was just like VR, AR in a broader context. And then it kind of just narrowed down more and more towards the virtual training space, where there's just such extremely clear, the value proposition is crystal clear for me, that you can educate people in a better way if they can get better educated, and then you can also do it in a way that can scale out, and you can educate more people with the same software instead of only having that strong dependency as on instructors. It's not necessarily a replacement, but maybe you don't need as many instructors, and you can train very many more times in utilizing VR and XR technology. So that's I guess that's where I came. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And Jonathan, what about you?
Yeah, so I'm a IT nerd in general, but I think it was 2014, 2015, I tried a VR headset for the first time. It was very rudimentary, very bare bones and basic. You could just tilt your head left to right, but that instantly got me hooked. As soon as I put the VR headset on, I thought, wow, this will change the world. So ever since then, I've been a very big believer, because bridging the gap between the real world and the virtual world and bring those two together, kind of like The Matrix, which has always been a favorite movie of mine. Yeah, to be part of that is just awesome. And working here at Wobbling, we have the coolest toys, the best engineers, the coolest programmers. So yeah, being at the forefront here is, yeah, it's really cool to build the Matrix.
Love that. And then Jonathan and Anders, tell us a little bit about when Mattias Gylby came to you to talk about implementing this. What did this process look like from the start to now?
Well, from the beginning, it was well, I wonder if Mattias was involved in that first, but I've done some work with SJ in the past, utilized some old context, mostly on the business development side. We're quite curious of what you can do with VR, but then this first project was this X2000 upgrade project. Nobody in management exactly knew what that train actually was going to look like. Basically all technology, all the furniture, everything's ripped out, and it's become basically a new train. And you need to educate a lot of staff on that new train. It was like a huge hurdle coming up. So that was kind of a little bit that start, the ignition of we have to do something here, because it's not even possible to train people to the right extent physically. And I think that was kind of what started it. And once we got going with the X2 upgrade project, then we saw just the next project, the next train, the next type of situation, application. And it's been a great partnership since then, I think. Yeah.
And how long did it take from the start to the first finished training?
Well, it depends on what you would do. What is a finished training? Because it's a process.
Executed training.
Yeah, because the first application that we built was that was training based, was I don't know what is all bones procedure. It's when you signal that the train is ready to leave the station. And that was really, really rough. It looked like a really old-fashioned CAD model, but you kind of understood the interactions and ways it was going to work. And then from there, it was kind of polished, and that became a decent application in the end. But yeah, we kind of took it from there. But then it's been ongoing for the last couple of years. Yeah.
Great. And now a question for you, Mattias Borg. As we saw in the demo earlier, Learnfire has been used to make this happen. Tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, sure. So I think I said it earlier as well. One of the things that we've always been looking for is how could technology be used, and when it's really accessible, make it accessible for people using it every day. That's what we're trying to do with Learnfire, and that's also what we see now with XR happening. That is becoming available. It's can be used on a cell phone. We just had a little demo here with the train being on the floor out here in the office, which is really cool. And so putting those new formats like XR into a platform like Learnfire, that's what we enable. So that's one part of it. The other part is that I think Anders talked about learning by doing is the most effective way. There is one more thing that is super important to get effective learning, and that is spaced learning. So what that means is learning over time. And that's kind of where Learnfire fits into the process of this, is that when you're deeply immersed in like an AR experience, you wouldn't care that there's anything else going on. But to make effective learning, it needs to happen over time. And that's where kind of we fit into that, making that possible, automating processes, and also making it a great experience over time. So yeah, that's where we kind of fit into this.
Thank you. And you are the CEO of Learnfire that was founded already in 2012. You have been at the forefront of e-learning for a long time, and that lots of things are happening. Do you see now that more and more companies are saying we want to start working with the VR, AR, and integrating that with the Learnfire platform?
Yes, and it's been, I think, a huge shift just in the last, I would say from my perspective, you might have a different opinion, but like the last 1 or 2 years, it's really when it started happening. I think it's once again, it's becoming available at a cost and in a production time and on devices that most everyone can use, whereas it used to be quartz and heavy stuff. And so yes, it's a big shift. And
what types of companies are asking for this?
I would say that kind of what we saw with SJ now is probably the typical, where it's more like technical training or those sorts of applications, but it is also becoming more into soft skills. And I think we'll see much more of that in the years to come. Like the example that I use, having a tough conversation, it's like when you do it on like a video interaction, it's not the same, but when you actually immerse yourself in a headset, for example, you're having that conversation, you actually start sweating. So, and that's the proof, because like being a perfect leader when you're calm and collected, that's an intelligent task. Being it when you're excited or scared or nervous, it's an emotional task. So it's new applications coming, but I think it started more from the technical, I would say, side, moving now also more and more into soft skills, leadership, sales, service, etc., etc.
Interesting. Thank you for that. And we move back to SJ again. What have been the highlights on this journey? I'm going to start with you, Matthias.
I would say the highlight has been to really emerge into the technology of VR and expanding it over time, and also see the reactions from the staff when they enter this virtual world. And the threshold has been quite low, but it's still a threshold when you have to put on a headset and take on controls in your hands and try to navigate in this digital world. But the more we use it, the more easy it is for them to let go of the controls and emerge into the training. And I think we are only starting in this field, and we're going to develop a lot more in the future.
Yeah, speaking on this topic with thresholds, a very interesting aspect of the technology today is that it's becoming more and more accessible. So for example, the Learnfire platform, if you want to learn something, you can just log in any time of the day and have access to all your learning content. And if you have scenarios that you need to be in like a physical space or need to train on a physical model, that is also now available 24/7. So I really like this example with the trains, that the trains are not always accessible, but in VR, that you can train on the trains 24/7 if you want. So yeah, and having this technology accessible through the web browser, as we saw in the demo, you don't need to download any applications or and the VR headsets of today are now also wireless. Just a few years back, or 2 years back, you had to put up all these cables and fiddle around with installing the right software on the computers, and it was a big hurdle for a lot of people to get into VR. but now it's becoming so much more accessible, and you can have your wireless headsets just throw it in your bag. And also when it comes to augmented reality devices, there are now billions of AR devices. It's your phone. So your phone fits in your pocket and you use it every day. So it's really nice to see this new type of technology being like accessible in a completely new way that it was as it wasn't just a year ago. So it's really cool to see the exponential like explosion of use cases and adoption of this technology. I think really cool.
Very cool. And Anders, what has been your highlights in this journey with SG?
But I think, I mean, when you see that something is working, that's kind of when you get that real satisfaction that it's like something you've been working super hard with. And I mean, from the beginning, we were more like, I would say, business and tech nerds, mainly tech nerds, probably a majority of the team, but we gradually became more to railway nerds, started understanding SJ better. But we as most of these type of like custom and bespoke virtual training programs were highly dependent on Matthias and also Matthias's team. Like the instructors, how are they educating today? We need to learn every step of a specific procedure and understand also kind of users with user testing. But so they are super critical components to get that done. But there have been several other things, and I think you know, just when we reached the point when it started rolling out at a broader scale, when XJ went to like 17 stations which are, I mean, operational, it's not, then you're leaving proof of concept and up to getting to something that can be utilized in a different way. So that was a kind of a big milestone. I think the other nice milestone is, which I think is super cool, is kind of the VR Fire Trainer has a specific custom application within SJ, and it's tackling the practical side of fire training, which is mandatory. And then SJ have digitized the theoretical part, which is kind of more an obvious, but these two packages together are kind of, they're bringing such value together. And so that's kind of also a way of seeing, like, you know, different forms of learning merged together and form a new way of value, I guess. Yeah. So that was
yeah, exciting. Yeah, and seeing all the different types of application and coming together on the Learnfire platform is really cool and exciting, because you shouldn't think of like VR training and theoretical training as separate anymore. These are like it becomes so much powerful when you can go through your entire educational journey, mixing all the types of technologies, because sometimes text is the preferred method of learning, and sometimes 360 video is preferred, or if you're training on a physical thing, then VR. So having these all combined and having like all the data in one place and having it accessible is yeah, it's really an eye-opener, I think.
And after working with SG for this time, you probably will be able to fill in for some of these train operators, right? And put out fires.
Yeah, I think a lot of our engineers could apply for a job at that.
right.
Recruitment for SG. Yeah. What about challenges? So what have been the lowlights, if you will, but what have you encountered on this journey?
Well, for me, it was more, I guess this is probably Matthias's area, but it's like trying to understand what users in the, I mean, age span, male, female, 18 to like 67, they all need to just, you know, jump in and understand this. It's got to be super, super intuitive. And I think we went wrong on lots of ways, and like designing the interactions in the wrong way. So we had to go back and iterate and make it even easier. Why is this going wrong? So that was one. That's kind of an iterative process that can kind of, you know, get things easier all the time. The other was, I think, technology to get that set up, you know, with SJ's IT team and getting pieces working with this, and how does that integrate with kind of this new type of VR software that they had never seen, and, you know, get all that stuff to work. So that was also, I guess, a hurdle to get over. But yeah, otherwise, it's been working. I think everybody was like super enthusiastic and seeing the value, and then that makes it a lot easier, obviously, to roll out. And also from user perspective, people that have tried it have been very, very positive along the way. So I think it's very truthful to say that it's kind of at first it can be a little bit like, ooh, it feels uncomfortable putting on this headset, and then people are watching you at the same time. It's a little bit exposing, and once you just get over that feeling, then they just kind of, you're immersed in this different, you're on the train and you are training something, and that's when they kind of see that, okay, I'm actually learning things that make sense. Yeah.
It's also a challenge to be an early adopter, because you can't use other companies or people's experiences in the learning development process. But I feel that we had a really successful project together with Wobbling, and the thing that worked really good for us was to include the instructors early on in the process, so they became ambassadors when it was time to show the product, the training to the staff. And so that's something I really recommend people to do, is to include the ones that are going to use it really early on, so that they feel that they have the control over it. And it's a change for them. They are used to standing in a classroom and holding a lecture, but now they have to enter this virtual world and try to instruct people that are immersed in a headset. So it's continuing developing over time, and you have to be observing it to see that we are on the right track. But I feel that we have learned enough to make the right decisions today. So we're not longer an early adopter. Now we are super users.
Yeah.
And I mean, normally when you introduce new projects, this whole change management process, maybe some people were more enthusiastic than others. How did you create a sense of security and also create some enthusiasm for the people who may have been a little bit reluctant for it at first?
We decided to let people try in the beginning. We didn't put any demands on the training to say that you have to pass this training program in the virtual world, but only to put the headset on, try a few times, and the instructors were really good at the supporting, and there were times when they felt like, I don't want to try this, but you have to respect that, and just believe that you will come to a day where everyone accepts it and be a part of that change, and try to navigate through that. And so the reflections is really important. From the staff, we always look at how did they feel about this training? Was it good? What wasn't good? What can we change to the next time, and so on. But the instructors is the biggest and most important part of the training. They have to be ambassador for this. They have to make the staff calm in that training environment and so on. So we collaborate really, really close with the instructors, and they are involved really, really early in the process. And that's, I think, is the only way to make this happen.
And how many instructors do you have in total, approximately?
I would say in the SU group about 100, but there are, I think, about 300 that in some way work with education, the staff. They are like train drivers that work like driving instructors and so on. But they have different roles, but about 100 instructors that perform in the classroom, but also out in the depot or on the tracks with the staff.
Interesting. And moving over to you a little bit, Anders or Jonathan, if I'm in charge of learning and development and I need to figure out which courses I need to VR, AR enable, what do you think? How do I know?
Well, I think it's if you have that role, I think you have probably an assessment of what your staff need. But I think it's most likely you will see that you've had problems in getting them to learn and retain knowledge in certain areas, and you can get them much better prepared for like incident management, that type of training scenarios where you're stressful, you don't know what to do, and if you've practiced a couple of times in VR, I think it will make a difference, for example. But I think it's assessing kind of where does VR bring that, where does immersion and interaction in VR, and when you can teleport into a new place of training, where does that make most sense, and where do we get the biggest bang for the buck? And then there's the different purposes. It could be like, we can make the workplace safer for our staff. That could be one reason. The other could be, okay, we need to do this more cost efficient. It's another reason. And there are a number of utilities in this sense. But I think you need to have, it's a little bit diversified in that sense. The ROI, I think. I mean, how do you measure human life? That's tricky, but it's obviously worth the most valuable though that you have, or is your stuff. But so I think it should make a deep dive and see where does it make most sense. And I think right in that kind of assessment process, that's where we like to come in, and I think we can be helpful and just give a little eye opening if you try out some of the applications that we have built, and you just you can see, okay, this application is solving that problem or had this purpose. How would that kind of convert, and how can I apply that in my business? And then I think it's a matter of, can we do that like an off-the-shelf solution, like a VR Fire Trainer product, and we can just basically buy it, and where else we have to design something that's more kind of custom or bespoke, and then it's more kind of diving into exactly how that process works, and that can be done in VR.
Interesting, and interesting that you speak about ROI, because I was going to ask you a little bit about that. How do you know you've done a successful VR training or AR training?
Well, the only way of knowing it is to measure and track and set decent KPIs, and in that sense, I think the market might be a little bit still immature. It's like, what do we is it the number of trainings? Is there a number that are passed? I'd say very few VR applications today are connected to an LMS system where the whole kind of performance or examination is actually tracked, and then it's much easier for somebody to say, okay, we need this many people that they need to be examinated with this training course. So I think that's kind of where we're tipping over now, and that's I think also where kind of learning management systems or e-learning platforms also come in play. They can have that. So using the data from VR applications and making it trackable, I think is super important.
And what about you, Matthias? What is a successful VR training at SJ?
A success is when they feel that they get the same training through VR that they would do if they were out in the real world, and that we could add it on and in a way make the course more shorter, but also more effective. And it also helps us to make sure that we can train people at any time, and because they have a need for continuous assessment training, and in that way we have a lot of options so that we can meet the needs at the point when they need it. And so that's what I would say that.
I would also say making training fun or learning fun. Because just reading manuals or like books, it's not like getting into VR and like doing stuff. Like even if it's a training scenario, it's almost like a game. So like gamifying the learning experience is I think very powerful. Because then you want to come back and do it again and again and be better and beat your high score. And save more lives and put out the fires quicker than before. So.
I think at SJ in the early stage they had like a whiteboard. You guys had that, and it was like, okay, I did this in this many seconds, and then it's like basically I like an analog high score type thing. I thought, oh, maybe we should bring that into the VR application and gamify that, because people like to compete.
They do.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Interesting that you mentioned gamification, because isn't it true, Matthias, that a lot of customers are now saying, oh, we want to have gamification in our training?
Yeah, and I think this is such a great example, because I think that there's tons of good ways using gamification, but there's also been kind of a medicine to try to fix boring e-learning, I believe. And I think this is exactly what you're saying. When you're engaging people, you don't need, it's the gamified experience. It's like, it's the physical gamified experience. It's not receiving the badge so much as actually doing stuff as fast as you can.
Yeah.
So I think that it's almost a new form of gamification, I would say, than what we've seen in the past.
Interesting. And in terms of time, I know we were talking a little bit about it before, but if I want to do a VR AR training, how long does it take from today till I have a course finished?
You mean the development process?
Yes. Until I can launch it.
Usually, I would imagine that like pre-production could be anything from like a few days to a couple of weeks. Sitting down with the right people, designing and just understanding whatever kind of problem we're trying to create. Then the actual development process could be anything from like 4 weeks roughly, or 2 weeks if it's a super simple scenario, but it could be usually I would say in the vicinity of a couple of months if it's like building something from scratch. something like that. Then there's, I mean, there's all kind of like hybrids versions of this. We can easily kind of adapt our VR Trainer, for example. We can put that into a specific environment. Then we just build a specific environment that's like relevant for a specific client. And then we have all the, you know, all the interaction, everything is there. We just needed fire spread and everything to work in that environment that's really, you know, natural for the client. It's like an, I don't know, an assembly line for a manufacturing company or something like that. So there's a hybrid version. Then it obviously goes a bit faster. Yeah.
Interesting. And in terms of results, what would you say are the main results? If you could pick 1 to 3 results from your trainings, what would that be, Matthias?
1 to 3. I think that the result is that they feel like the training in VR is often more effective than to go out in the real world and do it. Because if you do something wrong in the VR, you can go back to the beginning in a second instead of trying to lock the doors and put everything back to how it was when you came out to the train. And you don't make any dangerous mistakes. So it's that it's effective. It's not, in a way, we take away the danger. We take away everything that could distract them. And I also feel that it's a way for us to measure the performance too, because in our training program, the platform we built with Wobbling, it's possible for us to measure to see that they follow the process when they do things. And when they do something wrong, they are stopped immediately. And it makes signs like now you did something that could be dangerous to yourself, or now you did something in the wrong order, and so on. To have that thing and give them the opportunity to train on their own, because it's like an interactive digital instructor built into the platform. So in the future, they can do this training on their own, and it could be accessible 24/7 and so on. We're not there yet, but we are moving towards that. So that's also the opportunities in this. It's also a thing that we take with us, because as I said before, we are only starting, even if we have been using it for a couple of years now.
And in terms of connecting it to business results, that's always a bit tricky, but have you calculated some numbers? We've saved this amount of money. Yeah, maybe that's confidential. I don't.
It always starts with a business case, and so we have to make some improvements, but we try to make it more effective, shorten the training, but also do it in an effective way. And the fire extinguisher helped us perform fire training on our own, and that meant that we saved about 1 million crowns per year. Just moving from the real world into this platform and connecting it with our instructors and so on.
It was also just so I guess there was, you know, due to the pandemic, there was traditional instructors, they weren't even possible.
No,
they weren't accessible at this time either. So then the fire training was the only option that was out there, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So VR can really solve a situation because if the train staff doesn't get the necessary training, they can't go out and work with our passengers. And so if the fire department couldn't train us, then we were in a place where we couldn't take us from, and it helped us to solve things on our own in a way that has been really successful. And now all assessment training at SC regarding fire and HLR are done internal, and it wasn't like that for 2 years back.
Way to go!
Really cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Being a leader.
So if we look into the future here a little bit, I can see some questions about that from the chat. Like in 5 years, where are we with the learning and development? Is everybody using VR, AR, or what do we think? Matthias Borg, I will start with you.
Yeah, the least experience in that. But I come back to, you know, what I'm looking for is accessibility and lower cost, because I think that when it becomes available to the masses, and that's what we're interested in. So I think it will be obviously more technically advanced, but that's not the key that I see. It's going to be cheaper, easier to produce, and already what we're seeing here, how easy it is to do things. I can use my phone. I mean, we're getting close to something that is, I think, breaking new ground, really. So I think that's what I see in 5 years when it comes to the technology. Yeah, I leave that to someone else.
Yeah, technology is my type of question, and seeing a few years in the future, the headsets, the VR glasses, we already see them becoming much smaller. So hopefully in 5 years' time, it will be like a very thick pair of sunglasses. And also a very interesting shift is seeing how you do the mixed reality. So today the VR headsets you're fully immersed, but adding cameras or having semi-transparent screens could allow you to blend, so you can choose your level of reality. You could have like an object in your real environment, and you can basically turn a slider and just fade away the real world to go into a fully virtual environment. So seeing the headsets becoming smaller, the technology becoming even more accessible and cheaper is not far away at all. And also a big shift is moving the compute power to the cloud. So having these enormous, very high detailed photorealistic worlds, having them just being streamed to your VR headsets, just like any other Netflix series. So you just choose your experience and have your virtual world streamed to your glasses, I think will be a huge step forward for the industry. So yeah.
For me, I think it's if you kind of, I mean, if you just oversee the kind of the tech part and just look at utility, I think I think it's very much kind of what, you know, theoretical knowledge and e-learning and what e-learning has meant for scaling that and digitizing that. I really think that VR will be more like practiced in more like in many companies. So now it's kind of, I mean, fairly large companies in certain industries that have started practicing VR and starting to roll it out. And then, as you know, as it gets cheaper, more accessible, value for more, then it's going to kind of come down and go down to kind of like SMEs and smaller companies will be able to utilize this as well in a different way. So I think it's bound to grow.
Thank you so much. We only have a few minutes left now of this webinar, but I want to thank you in the panel. Thank you very much. Very interesting. And for all the questions we didn't have time to answer now, we'll send them to the panelists and we will send them out afterwards, along with the recording as well as the presentation slides. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We hope that you leave inspired. So thank you, and may the learning be with you.
Yeah, hey, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.